So, good morning, everyone. My name is Arafat, and I teach history on the textbook platform. So, in this session, let us discuss a very important topic of modern world history. That is the American Civil War. It is American Civil War. Just American Civil War. So, this war was fought between 1861 to 1865. Now, let us understand what the American Civil War is. Let us understand why this war broke out. And let us also see the outcome of this particular war. So, basically, the American Civil War is one of the most important events the history of United States of America. So, this war, the American Civil War, is very important event history of United States of America. War was fought between 1861 to 1865 between the two parts of United States, that is the northern states and the southern states. So let me repeat: this American Civil War was fought between 5 to 6, 1 to 65. This war was fought between two groups of states of United States of America, that is the northern states. I will explain what these northern states are just in a while. So the northern states they called themselves as the Union, whereas the southern states they called themselves as the Confederate. So basically, this was a war fought between the two groups of states of United States of America, that is the northern states and the southern states. So by 1860, so basically America became an independent country in 1770 itself. So in 1776, America declared independence, and finally, its independence was recognized by the colonial master Britain in 1780. So it was only in the year 1776 America, that is United States of America, became independent country. Till then, was under the control of colonial master Britain, and in fact, a war was fought between uh, America, that is the people of America, and Britain, and it was a war fought between 1775 to 1780. So during the course of this war, America declared its independence in 76, which was finally recognized by Britain in 1783 AD. So the point is, uh, the first and the most important event to have happened in the United States after it emerged as an independent country was none other than this event, that is American Civil War. This event happened between 1801 to 6 point. So basically, uh, by 1860, the point is at present in United States of America there are 50 states at the point, but back in those days by 1860 there were 34 states in United States of America. Now we have 50 states in United States of America, but 1860 the United States consisted of 34 states. These 34 states were divided into two groups. One is the northern states, which comprised of 23 states, whereas the southern states they comprised of 11 states. So by 1860, the 34 states of United States of America were divided into two groups, the northern states and the southern states. So uh, a conflict broke out between both of these groups in one conflict. Not clear. Am I not audible? Just a minute. Just a minute. Am I audible now? Audible now? Saumyam. Saumyayam. You just confirm it. Audible now? Fine. So the point is there were 34 states in United States of America by 1860. So in 1861, a conflict broke out between these two groups of United States of America at a point. So, but finally, this conflict. The point is, a conflict broke out between the northern and the southern states 1861. As a result of this conflict, the southern states, the 11 southern states, seceded, that is, declared independence from the United States of America. They declared themselves as an independent country. So basically, by 1860, the differences between the northern states and the southern states increased so much that in 1861, the 11 southern states declared independence from the United States of America. It declared as altogether a separate country. But the point is, the northern states, the 23 northern states, refused to recognize the secession of the 11 southern. They refused to recognize the secession of the 11 southern states. It was over this question that a war fought. The war was fought in United States of America. It is, we call this as American Civil War. Let me repeat this point once again. The point is, in 1861 to 1865, the war was fought between the northern states and the southern states. We call this as American Civil War. The end, the 11 southern states were defeated, and once again they were made to join the Confederation. That is, they were made to join the Union. They were once again made a part and parcel of United States. So let us see why this civil war happened, how the civil war proceeded, why the civil war ended. All these aspects, let us see one after point. So let us understand the reasons for the American Civil War. One reason, the reason number one for the American Civil War was the economic disparities. Economic disparities. So the northern states, I told you, there were 23 northern states, 11 southern states, all put together, there were about 34 states by 1860. So the northern states were 23 in number. The northern states were industrial states. The northern states were industrially well developed states, whereas the southern states, the 11 southern states, were predominantly agrarian states, where mostly uh, cotton was cultivated. Where mostly cotton was cultivated. So the point is, the economic interests of the northern states and the economic interest of the southern states were not one and the same. So there were differences in the economic interest of both of these groups of states. This became reason number one for growing disputes between both of these groups of states. You will understand what this dispute in a while, but the whole point which I'm trying to convey is the northern states were industrial states. Industry was well developed here. There were large scale manufacturing industries. The point. Whereas the southern states by and large were agrarian states. The point. So the economic interest of the northern states and the economic interest of the southern states was not one and the same. That's the point. So that led to conflict between both of these categories, both of these groups of states. That is reason number one for the conflict. Second reason is educational disparities. Educational disparities. So basically, the northern states had a large number of schools and colleges. In fact, most of the top universities of United States of America were located in the northern states only. So top universities were located in northern states. Uh, North also had a number of schools and colleges. So the northern states, in the northern states, literacy rate was very high. On the contrary, the literacy rates in the southern states was less. So in terms of education, in terms of educational development, the southern states definitely lagged behind the northern states. they lagged behind. The southern states lagged behind the northern states when compared to the point. So the point is, as a result, the people of the southern states were not open-minded. They were not welcoming of the reforms. Since the people of the northern states, they were educated, they were uh, they were open-minded, they were welcoming of the reforms, which was not the case with respect to the people of the southern. This had to do with the educational development in the southern. Not the only reason, but these educational disparities also contributed to tensions between both of these groups of states. Third is the question of slavery. The third reason for conflict between the northern and the southern states is over the question of slavery. So slavery was legal, very much legal in the United States, particularly in the southern states. Of course, slavery was legal in the United States before the Civil War, that is till 1865. Uh, Slavery was quite legal in the United States. Particularly, it was more acceptable in the southern states. So you know what we mean by slavery. Slavery, the point is, humans were employed. Uh, the point is, humans uh, were forced as the point is, uh, like how we have markets for cattle and other animals, there used to exist markets for humans as well. So the humans were also purchased in the markets, and such humans began to be referred to as slaves, and they were forced into uh, uh, the masters, that is the individuals who owned the slaves, were getting all kinds of work done with the help of their slaves. So this slavery was quite common during the ancient and medieval times in most of the parts of the world, and this system existed even in America. It was in fact a legal system in United States till 1865, but it was a more acceptable. It was a more acceptable system in the southern states than that of the northern states. At the point. So basically, the for the southern states, the slavery or the slaves were in fact economically indispensable. So who are these slaves? Mostly these were the people who were brought from Africa and were made to work as agrarian agricultural laborers in the fields of the southern states. Let me repeat, who are these slaves? These were the people who were basically brought from Africa, and they were made to work as agricultural laborers in mostly the fields in southern states of America. So for the southern states, slavery was considered economically indispensable because agriculture is labor intensive activity. So the point is, agriculture is a labor intensive activity, and therefore the farmers, the land owners of the southern states, they mostly favored continuation of the system of slavery, because it was with the help of the slaves only that they were carrying out their agricultural operation. In north, agriculture was not a primary economic activity, because industries had developed in North America. People mostly worked in the industries, whereas in the southern states, people mostly depended on agriculture. So the landlords of the southern states, since agriculture being a labor intensive activity, favored the continuation of the system of slavery. That's a point. So basically, the northern states were not so much in favor of slavery because they were educated, but the southern states, on the other hand, they favored continuation of the system of slavery, because without slavery, they can never think of carrying out their agricultural operation. That was the situation. So this question of slavery became another reason for the outbreak of the civil war, because the northern states were in favor of abolition of slavery, whereas the southern states they were in favor of continuation of the system of. So the fourth reason is the emergence of the abolitionist societies and movements. So basically, I told you North is basically uh, North is basically uh, uh, in North education was much more developed, literacy rate was high. So therefore, the people of northern states began to view slavery as an unethical and immoral practice. As the people of North were much more educated, they began to realize that slavery is unethical and immoral practice. And gradually, uh, various movements emerged in North America demanding abolition of slavery from the whole of America. So gradually, in North America, movements began demanding abolition of slavery from the whole of America. At a point, we call these movements as abolitionist societies and movement. So basically, the North people of northern states, they being well educated, they began to realize that continuation of the system of slavery was very unethical and immoral, and therefore they started these movements demanding abolition of slavery at the point. But when the people of the northern states, when they were carrying out such movements, it was definitely not to the liking of the people of the southern states. When I say people, I'm particularly referring to the landlords of the southern states. So, on the other hand, one hand, the people of northern states were carrying out abolitionist movements. On the other hand, the landlords of the southern states uh, began to think that the people of northern states are unduly interfering in their personal matter. So the point is, the people of southern states, they were not happy with the people of northern states, because the people of northern states were interfering the activities in the affairs of the people of the southern states. So these abolitionist societies and movements and their activities, course of time, also began to create a tension between these two groups of states, that is the northern states and the southern states. So these were the four important reasons for the outbreak of the American Civil War. At a point. So we have discussed the four reasons. Take a look at the reasons. One is economic disparity. The economic interest of the north and the southern states was not one and the same. That is reason number one for the reason number one for outbreak of civil war. Educational disparities also existed. North was well educated people. North people were educated. On the other hand, in south people were not that educated. So therefore, the people of the southern states were not open-minded enough. They were not welcoming of the reforms. Third is the question of slavery. The northern states demanded abolition of slavery, but the southern states, for the southern states, uh, slavery was economically indispensable. So therefore, they favored continuation of the slavery. Fourth, the emergence of abolitionist societies in northern states. Southern states began to view the activities of the abolitionists of the northern states as an undue interference in the affairs of the southern states. So the activities of the abolitionist societies began to create tensions between both of these groups of states. So take a look at this map of India. This was this was the map of United States of America in 1820. So this whole region now constitutes the United States of America map which I am showing. But in 1820, so in this whole region of United States of America, now we have 50 states. But 1820, there were merely 34 states in the United States of America. Mostly these 34 states were located on the on the east coast of the East Atlantic coast of North America. So mostly these 34 states were located on the East Atlantic coast of North America, as the eastern part of America, eastern part of present day United America. I hope I am clear. So in 1820 there were 34 states. These 34 states were located in the in the uh, they were located in the eastern part of the present day United States of America. So the entire territory west of these were the Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Alabama, Tennessee, UK. All these, you see for yourself, these were the 34 states mostly located on the east part of United States of America. So the territory west of these 34 states were largely uninhabited territory. Largely uninhabited territory. There were a few people here and there, but it was largely uninhabited territory. Of course, largely in course of time, even in this territory, in these west of these 34 provinces, uh, uh, states began to be established. Now let us take a look at how this happened. So basically, by 1820, just I was saying that there were, I'm sorry, it is not 34, I'm extremely sorry. So it is not, I'm extremely sorry. By 1860, we had 34 states, but by 1820, we only had 20. These were the 23 states. Sorry, let me correct myself. So by 1820, there were only 23 states. These were the various 23 states shown on this picture. So basically, by 1820, there were 23 states in America. When I say America, I'm referring to the United States at the point. So I just told you they were located mostly on the East Coast. So with time, new states began to be established, and these states began to be uh, established to the west of these states. Here in this region, states began to be established. So in 1820, there were 23 states. With time, new territories began to be new states be established to the west of the already existing 23 states. So in this area, new states began to be established at the point. So the point is this expansion, we call this as a westward expansion. This expansion uh, posed one critical question. That is, should these new territories uh, 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 should these new territories allow slavery, or should these new territories be declared as free states? So basically, this westward expansion began to raise one critical question. The question is, should these territories allow slavery, the new states that would form allow slavery, or should these new states that would be formed be declared as a free state? Free states means state without slavery, because in northern states, slavery by and large was abolished by the people of those states. But as in the southern states, in the 11 southern states, slavery was quite common. That's the point. So let me repeat this point once again. So the point is, initially by 1820, there were only 23 states, and with time, new states began to be established. We call this as westward expansion. And whenever the point is, this westward expansion began to it posed a critical question: is these new states should be declared whether the new states should be declared as free states, or whether slavery should be allowed in the new states. Okay, point. So the point is, the North did not want the ex- extension of slavery to the new states. The southern states, on the other hand, were in favor of extension of slavery to the newly established states. So the point is, from uh, beginning of 19th century itself, this conflict continued between both of these groups of states. But by 1820, an agreement was reached between both of these groups of states. So let me repeat the point once again. The point is, to the northern states, did not want expansion of slavery to the newly established states, or the states which wanted to did not want the expansion of the slavery to the new states, whereas the southern states on the other hand wanted expansion of the slavery even to the newly states or new states. So this conflict continued from the beginning of the 19th century in both of these groups of states, both of these groups of states. But finally, an agreement was reached between both of these groups of states called Missouri Compromise. This agreement was reached the year 1820. 1820, an agreement was reached between North and the Southern states. That's the point. So the point is, let me repeat this point once again. In 1820, in 1820, a new state applied for admission into the Union. In 1820, a new state applied for admission into the Union. New state was Missouri. So when this new state applied for admission, the northern states demanded that the Missouri should be made as a free state. The southern states demanded that Missouri should be declared as a slave state, where slavery will be legal. But the point is, this conflict, though it started, this conflict soon came to an end with an agreement called Missouri Compromise that was reached in 18. Take a look at the provisions of this Missouri Compromise. The first provision says that Missouri, uh, which applied for admission into the Union, shall join the Union as a slave state. Missouri, which applied for admission into the Union in 1820, shall join the Union as a slave state. But second provision is important. Take a look at this provision. The second provision declared that any new state formed in the west of river Mississippi and to the north of 36-degree latitude shall join the Union as a free state. So the conflict broke out when Missouri applied for admission into the Union, but this conflict came to an end with the Missouri Compromise. Provision 1 of Missouri Compromise says that Missouri shall join the Union as a slave state. That's all right. But second provision says that any new state formed in the west of river Mississippi and to the north of 36-degree latitude shall join the Union as a free state. So any new state that would join in future, if it is located to the west of Mississippi and to the north of 36-degree latitude, shall compulsorily join the Union only as a free state. That was an agreement that was reached as part of Missouri Compromise. Take a look at this picture. So basically, somewhere here, the Mississippi River is flowing. So any territory that would be created in future which is located to the west of Mississippi and to the north of 36-degree latitude. Somewhere here the 36-degree latitude is passing. I'll show you in the next photograph. So any territory that would be created to the north of 30-degree latitude shall be declared only as a free state. That was an agreement that was reached as a part of Missouri Compromise. And this compromise is this is basically an agreement between two groups of states, that is the northern state and the southern state. And this agreement uh, established peace between north and the southern states till roughly 1854. Till 1854, uh, the Missouri Compromise established peace. So for about 3 decades, uh, the Missouri Compromise established a point. So more or less, the provisions of the Missouri Compromise were adhered to whenever a new state applied for admission. Let me repeat, more or less, the provisions of the Missouri Compromise were adhered to whenever a new state applied for admission. So, for example, in 1848, in 1848, two new states applied for admission to the Union. One is California, the other is Texas. So this California is located to the west of Mississippi, but it is located north of 36-degree latitude. So therefore, as per the Missouri Compromise, California was declared as a free state. And on the other hand, Texas was located to the south of 36-degree latitude. So therefore, as per the Missouri Compromise, the Texas was declared as a slave state. Slave state means a state where uh, slavery would be legal. Slave state. So in the free states, basically the people of that state itself declared slavery as illegal. That's the point. So let me repeat this point once again. Missouri Compromise was reached in 1820. These are the provisions of this conference. The provisions of the Missouri Compromise, more or less till 1854. The provisions of the Missouri Compromise were adhered to by both these sides, both the groups of states. Whenever a new state applied for admission, the new states were given admission on the basis of Missouri Compromise only. For example, in 1848, two new states applied for admission. One is California, other is Texas. You know what happened with California and Texas. So everything went all right till 1854. But in 1854, two more. This is basically the map. So territory west of Mississippi. This is the Mississippi River. This Missouri was created in 1820 itself. So this is basically the 36-degree latitude. So according to the Missouri Compromise, all the territory located to the north of 30° shall be declared as free states, and all the proposed new states that would be to the south of 36-degree latitude shall be created as slave states. That is what I have just shown at a point. So everything was all right till 1854. But in 1854, two more states applied for admission. One is Kansas, the other is Nebraska. So in 1854, two more states applied for admission into the Union. One state is Kansas, the other is Nebraska. But the point is, both of these states were lying to the north of 36-degree latitude. Both Kansas and Nebraska, both were lying uh, to the north of 36-degree latitude. So as per the Missouri Compromise, these two states, that is Kansas and Nebraska, should join the Union only as free states. So as per the Missouri Compromise, these two proposed new states should join the Union only as free states. Okay, point. But a dispute broke out in 1854 for this question. So let us understand what this dispute is. There was a politician by name Stephen Douglas. There was a politician by name Stephen Douglas. So basically, he was a senator from Illinois. It is basically a northern state. Illinois is basically a northern state, and Stephen Douglas is a senator from Illinois. So this Stephen Douglas was very ambitious. He wanted to run for the post of the President of United States. So basically, Stephen Douglas was very ambitious. He wanted to run for the post of the President of United States, and therefore, with a view to get the support of even the southern states for his presidential election. The point is, with a view to get the support of even the people of southern states for his presidential election, he demanded right from 1854 itself. Stephen Douglas started demanding repeal of the Missouri Compromise, which was reached in 18. So right from 1854 onwards, Stephen Douglas started demanding repeal of the Missouri Compromise from 1854 onwards. At a point, so he did this with a view to get the support of the southern states, because the southern states, they were in favor of extension of slavery to new states at a point. So they they did not want, in fact, they grudgingly accepted the Missouri Compromise, but they were in favor of extending slavery to as many states as. So, with a view to get the support of the people of southern states, Stephen Douglas began demanding repeal of the Missouri Compromise. So, therefore, the point is in 1854 itself, he succeeded in getting an act passed. That is, Stephen Douglas in 1854 itself succeeded in getting an act passed called Kansas-Nebraska Act. Kansas-Nebraska Act 1854. That's the point. So the point is this act effectively overturned the Missouri Compromise. The Kansas-Nebraska Act, it effectively overturned the Missouri Compromise. As a result, the people of the northern states were very, very disappointed because the people of northern states wanted the Missouri Compromise to remain in place. They wanted at least the states formed of are formed in the north of 36-degree latitude shall join the union only as a free states. But the point is, in 1854, Stephen Douglas succeeded in getting Kansas-Nebraska Act. Let us take a look at the provisions of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. So, according to the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the decision, uh, the point is, according to the Kansas-Nebraska Act, the people of the Kansas and the Nebraska states should have the authority to decide whether they wanted their states to remain as free states or slave states. So the point is, Kansas-Nebraska Act stated that this decision, whether Kansas and Nebraska states shall remain as free states or whether they wanted to become slave states, should be left to be decided by the people of the Kansas and Nebraska themselves. That is, in simple, in short, the provision of this Kansas-Nebraska Act. Take a look at the two states, namely Kansas and Nebraska, shall decide the issue of slavery through popular sovereignty. So basically, who will decide whether Kansas and Nebraska shall remain as free states or should join as slave states? This decision will be decided by the people of both of these. So, in case if the people of both Kansas and Nebraska vote in favor of declaring their states as slave states, in such a case, according to the Kansas-Nebraska Act, slavery should become legal. Uh, Slavery should become legal. So the that's the summary of the Kansas-Nebraska Act. This was what was mentioned in this particular act. So basically, the Kansas-Nebraska Act was it greatly disappointed the people of the northern states, because the people of the northern states wanted abolition of slavery, or at least they wanted to maintain a balance. So they wanted all the states to be formed to the south of 36 degree can be formed as slave states, but at least they wanted the states formed out of the territory lying to the north of 36-degree latitude shall become only as free state. That was the argument, that was the demand put forward by the northern state. So that was effectively overturned under the Kansas-Nebraska. So the point is that this Kansas-Nebraska Act created tensions between both of these. Point is, the Kansas-Nebraska Act 1854 effectively increased the tensions between northern and the southern states. In fact, the Kansas-Nebraska Act greatly favored the southern states, because the people of both of the states, that is Kansas and Nebraska, themselves can decide whether they wanted to keep their states as free states or slave. That's the point. Now, another very important development that ultimately paved the way for the outbreak of the Civil War was the Dred Scott affair. So another very significant event that escalated tensions between the northern and the southern states was the Dred Scott affair, which happened in 1857. Dred Scott was basically, so this Dred Scott affair was basically a decision given by the Supreme Court of United States in 1857. Dred Scott affair was basically a judgment given by the Supreme Court of America in 1857. Dred Scott was basically a Negro. He was a Negro. Uh, he was originally a slave belonging to Missouri state. Dred Scott is the name of an individual. He is a Negro. He is a Negro slave belonging to the Missouri state. So his master, that is his owner, had first taken him to Illinois, his free state. Illinois is basically a northern state where slavery was banned. So the owner of Dred Scott had first taken him to Illinois, and from there, uh, Dred Scott was later taken to a territory north of 36 degrees of latitude or 36-degree latitude. That's the point. So the point is that Dred Scott is a Negro. He's a slave originally belonging to Missouri state where slavery was legal. But the owner of Dred Scott had taken Dred Scott first to Illinois, which is a free state, and from there he was again taken to territory north of 36-degree latitude. So north of 36-degree latitude is basically a territory, according to Missouri Compromise, a free territory, a territory where there shall not be any slavery. So Dred Scott was taken twice to a territory where slavery was illegal. Slavery was banned, first to Illinois and then to territory north of 36-degree latitude. So immediately, this Dred Scott went to the Supreme Court and argued that since he was twice taken to a free territory, he should be set free. He should be declared as a free man. Basically, Dred Scott immediately went to the court and argued that since he was taken to a free state twice, since he was twice taken to a free state, first to Illinois, later to a territory north of 36-degree latitude, he should be declared as a free man. He cannot be termed as a slave. But Supreme Court in this case gave a very sensational judgment. This is a Dred Scott case. Supreme Court of United States gave a sensational judgment, and this judgment became one of the reasons for the outbreak of the Civil War in 1861. So what did the Supreme Court decide in this particular case? Basically, Supreme Court decided on three major components. Basically declared that the Negroes, that is the African Americans, could never be citizens of United States. Basically, this Supreme Court in this case gave judgments on 3 points. Point number one, it declared that the Negroes, that is the African Americans, could not be citizens of United States. They can never acquire the citizenship of United States. That's the point. Since they cannot acquire the, the citizenship of United States of America, uh, the rights applicable to the citizens of America cannot be made applicable to them. So basically, Supreme Court gave this judgment in this case. It declared that the African Americans could not be citizens, and therefore, since they were not citizens, they cannot claim any rights at all. That is in simple terms. That is what Supreme Court declared. Since United States, since the African Americans could not be citizens at all, and therefore Supreme Court declared that they can never claim any rights in United States of America. So that was the first decision taken by the Supreme Court. Second, it declared that the enslaved people were property of the owners. Basically, in this Dred Scott case, the Supreme Court declared that the enslaved people were the property of the owners, and it declared that the American Parliament cannot deprive the American citizens of their property without due process. Basically, the American Supreme Court declared that the slaves, the enslaved people, as the property of their owners, and therefore declared that the Congress, that is the Parliament of United States of America, has no right to deprive the American citizens of their property without due process. So basically, in America, right to property is a fundamental right. So therefore, the Supreme Court declared that the American Congress, that is the Parliament, does not have the right to deprive the American citizens of their property without due process. So basically, the American Supreme Court declared even the slaves as the property of the owners. So therefore, the Supreme Court declared that the Congress can never deprive the citizens of their property except in some exceptional conditions without due process. That is what the Supreme Court of America declared. Third, it also declared that Congress had absolutely, basically, third, uh, the Congress, Supreme Court declared the Missouri Compromise as unconstitutional. Basically, the Supreme Court even declared that Missouri Compromise reached in 1820 was unconstitutional and illegal. This was the decision taken by the Supreme Court in the 1887 Dred Scott case. So, what is the implication of this judgment? So basically, this judgment suggested that the entire territory of United States of America is open for slavery, regardless of previous laws and agreement. Basically, what is the implication of this judgment? This judgment implied that the entire territory of United States of America shall be open for slavery, whether regardless of previous laws and agreements such as the Missouri Compromise. So this act, this judgment, that is the judgment passed in 1887, created bitter tensions between the northern states and the southern states. The southern states were happy with this judgment because the judgment went in their favor, but northern states were not happy with judgment at all. Immediately, uh, large-scale protests broke out in North America against the judgment. So protests broke out in North America against judgment, and it was against this judgment it was in protest against this judgment. A new political party also came into existence in North America, in the northern states, namely the new Republican Party. Let me repeat this point once again. So the point is, large scale protests broke out in the northern states against the Dred Scott judgment, and in fact, uh, uh, it was after this judgment a new political party also came into existence in northern states. That is the new Republican Party. This was a new party that came into existence uh, after the Dred Scott judgment. And the aim of this new party, that is the new Republican Party, was to abolish slavery from the whole of United States. Was the aim with which this party was established. So meanwhile, elections were held. The presidential elections were held in 1860. So this presidential elections of 1860 was, in fact, the let me repeat. In 1860, presidential elections were held at a point. So the outcome of the presidential elections became the immediate reason for the outbreak of a civil war in United States of America. Call this as American. So presidential elections were held in 1860 at a point. So in this election, numerous political parties participated. For example, Republican Party participated. So the presidential candidate for this election The presidential candidate of the Republican Party was Abraham Lincoln. So the point is, Republican Party participated. So it's a choice for the post of the President of United States was Abraham Lincoln. That's the point. So this Abraham Lincoln, he was opposed to expansion of slavery, but generally he did not plan to abolish it from all parts of United States of America. Point is, Abraham Lincoln was just opposed to expansion of slavery to the states, but he did not plan to abolish it from the states where it already exists. But he contested the post of the President of United States in the 1860 election. And what is even more important is Abraham Lincoln was a Negro. A Negro. So he became the choice of the Republican Party for the President of United States of America. What a point. So Abraham Lincoln stood. Then we have the Democratic Party, or the Northern Democratic Party, led by Stephen Douglas. So he was the one responsible for the Kansas-Nebraska Act 1854. Then we have the Southern Democratic Party at a point. So led by uh, John Breckinridge. So these names are not very important. So the whole point which I'm trying to convey is there were two major contenders to the post of President of United States of America in the 1860 elections. One is Abraham Lincoln, who was basically the nominee of the Republican Party. Then we have Stephen Douglas, who was the nominee of the Democratic Party. But what was the outcome of these elections? Point is, Lincoln won the election. Abraham Lincoln won the election. And the decision of the southern state, but the point is, the election of a Negro, the election of a Negro is a black man as the President of United States of America was not to the liking of the Southern. Because in southern states, uh, the Negroes were looked down. They were not treated as equal citizens, equal individuals. So the the people of southern states absolutely did not like when Abraham Lincoln, a Negro, was elected as the President of America. And the decision of the southern states to the election of a Negro as the President of United States was a secession. The point is, the southern states were not happy with uh, Abraham Lincoln elected as the President of United States. Immediately, they decided to secede from the United States. They decided to secede from the Union. In fact, in 1861, they seceded from the Union. In 1861 itself, they seceded from the Union. And the southern states, I told you there were 11 southern states, 23 northern states, all put together, there were 34 states by 1860. So the 11 southern states seceded from the Union, from the United States, formed a new union called Confederate States of America. So the southern states declared independence. They formed a new confederation called the Confederate States of America. They called themselves Confederate States of America. They elected one Mr. Jefferson Davis as their president. They also framed their own constitution. They also prepared their own flag. So basically, they elected Jefferson Davis as the president of the Confederate States of America. They drafted another constitution. They also adopted another flag. So on the other hand, the president elect, on the other hand, the president elect, that is Abraham Lincoln, refused to recognize the secession. He refused to recognize the secession. So he refused to recognize the legality of the secession. At the point. So Abraham Lincoln, who was basically president elect, declared that the states have absolutely no right to get separated from the Union. Basically, he argued that the states absolutely do not have the right to get separated from the Union. He argued that the Union is the United States Union was perpetual, means it is will go on forever. The secession of the southern states was unconstitutional. So basically, he argued that the union was perpetual, and the secession, he declared the secession of southern states as unconstitutional. Basically, he refused to recognize the southern states. This is the stand taken by the president-elect of the United States of America, that is Abraham. So the point is, the southern states, on the other hand, argued that they have every right to secede from the union. The northern states, uh, on the other hand, argued, northern states, whose leader was Abraham Lincoln, argued that the southern states absolutely do not have the right. So it was over this question of secession that the Civil War broke out in 1861 and continued till 1865. So why did this the Civil War break out? Was it to decide the question of slavery? The point is yes, to some extent. But the point is the Civil War broke out in 1861 uh, uh, on the question of uh, the separation and not so much on the question of slavery. The point is the American Civil War in 1861 broke out on the question of a separation, but not so much on the question of slavery. It is not to decide the question of slavery American Civil War broke out. It is to decide the question of separation that the American Civil War broke out. What separation? Basically, the northern states argued that the southern states do not have the right to secede from the union. The southern states, on the other hand, argued that they have every right. They don't like to be part of the union to secede from the union at any time. It was over this question, it was over this dispute that the Civil War broke out in 1861, continued till 1860. Sorry, at the point. So the point is the Civil War was fought between 1861 to 65, 1861 to 1865. Initially, the southern states had an upper hand, but eventually the southern states were defeated, and once again they were made to become a part of the union. They were made to join the United. That's the outcome. So the war happened between 1 to 65, but in the end, the uh, the southern states were defeated, and they were once again made to join the United States. That is, they were made to join the union. But why did the southern states get defeated? Let us take a look at the reasons for the defeat of the southern states. Not very difficult to understand. One is the availability of resources. I told you the northern states are highly industrialized states. So all weapon manufacturing industries were located in northern states, whereas the southern states were predominantly agrarian states. So the infrastructure development in northern states was far higher when compared to the southern states. So in northern states, the railway development was higher. So the population of the northern states was also higher. So the whole point is the northern states were far superior in terms of availability of material resources, also in terms of non-material resources like say human resource, because the population of the northern states was much higher compared to the southern states. Even in terms of material prosperity, the northern states were far richer than southern states. So the northern states had a large industrial base. They also had a large number of weapon manufacturing industries. So naturally, the northern states used the material prosperity to advantage and succeeded in defeating the southern. So one is the availability of the resources. So in terms of availability of resources, the northern states were far more superior. Then second important reason for the defeat of the southern states was the neutrality of Britain. Basically, the southern states hoped that Britain would support them during the course of the Civil War. Basically, the southern states hoped that Britain would support them during the course of the Civil War. This was because Britain largely depended on the southern states for cotton. Point is, Britain by 1860 emerged as one of the biggest manufacturers of textiles, but Britain mostly imported textile from countries like India, Egypt, and United States of America. So the people of the southern states believed that since Britain was dependent on them for the cotton, so Britain would come to the help of the southern states. This was the hope of the southern states. But on the contrary, Britain remained neutral. Britain neither helped the northern states nor it helped the southern states. It remained neutral. So had Britain helped the southern states, possibly uh, it would have been very difficult for us to uh, uh, which turn the war would have taken. It would have been very difficult for us to imagine. So but the point is, this war would have dragged on for even more years. But the point is, this war ended in 1865 itself, that is within 4 years, largely because Britain remained neutral, neither supported the northern states nor the southern states. The third is superior war strategy. So when compared to the southern states, the northern states definitely uh, uh, implemented a far superior war strategy. So that explains the reason for their success. Don't have to go into the details, but the point is, when compared to the southern states, northern states implemented a far superior war strategy. At a point. Then what are the results of the war? So one outcome of the war was it led to lot of death and destruction. Particularly, the death and destruction was very high in southern states. An estimated 6,20,000 soldiers died in civil war. Mostly, the deaths occurred mostly in the southern states. At a point. Then, after the end of the war, uh, a series of constitutional amendments were carried out in the States of America. We call these as Reconstruction Amendments. So, in the post-Civil War period, um, a series of constitutional amendments were carried out in States of America. We call this as Reconstruction Amendments. So, that is the 13th, 14th, and the 15th Amendment. So, the 13th Amendment abolished slavery from the whole of United States of America. It completely abolished slavery from all parts of America. So till 1865, slavery was legal in southern states, was declared unconstitutional in northern states. But the 13th Amendment abolished slavery from the whole of United States of America. Then the 14th Amendment guaranteed citizenship to all the persons born or naturalized in the United States. So basically, the 14th Amendment guaranteed citizenship to all the people either born or naturalized in the United States. 15th Amendment granted voting rights to all the people irrespective of their. So voting rights were granted to all the people of America irrespective of their. So it means that till 1865, voting rights were confined to a section of the American society. It was not granted to. Finally, in 1865, voting rights were given to all the people regardless of their at a point. So we call this as a Reconstruction Amendment. Third is, it led to the rise of a new political party, that is the Republican Party, because the party was established only in the year 18. So the point is, Republican Party uh, it won the 1860 presidential elections. So for a very long time period, at least for 40 long years, till the beginning of the 20th century AD, so the Republican Party continued to win almost all the presidential elections. So the point is, Republican Party emerged as major political force in United States of America um, after the Civil War. In fact, till the beginning of the 20th century AD, Republican Party continuously won all the presidential. The fourth important outcome of Civil War is gradually social change began to take place in America. So the point is initially uh, uh, in 18 uh, initially slavery was abolished, but gradually movements began in favor of the civil rights of the American African Americans. So basically, gradually movements also began for the rights of the African American, other rights of. Gradually this began in the post Civil War time period. That's all about particular topic. In case you have any doubts, you may ask a question. This is these are the various details associated with the American. That's all for today. See you in the next class. Take up discussion.